Hello, everyone, and good morning. The trial's just started, obviously, started at quarter till here. So just let you know where we are in sort of the logistics of things. The defense is just starting the cross-examination, so we're about 5 questions deep into this, just getting started with the cross-examination of this witness, so you haven't missed anything now. And we'll bring back the audio of this and listen to the cross-examination. This is the trial of Scot Peterson, school resource officer at Parkland, Florida. Scot Peterson's duty station was the school. He had had that duty station for 9 years at the time of the incident. He's essentially being accused of cowardice in so many words, negligent, negligence, and that led to death of both students and faculty members, and also a count of perjury for lying during some sort of official investigation. So far in the trial, we've heard from obviously the state. So far, it's been emotionally heavy testimony, not much to directly implicate the officer, but that's to be somewhat expected on the timing and process of the trial. And so we're trying to see if we can get some stuff that really deals with what the defense lawyer, apologize, the defendant himself did or did not necessarily did actually do. So let's turn up the volume and see what's going on in this case.
Coming across your radio system, correct?
No, sir.
The only way that that occurs is when the radios are patched, correct?
That is correct.
Tell the jurors what you understand patching to mean.
Patching is something that's done through dispatch. I don't really have that much knowledge on it. The only thing I can tell you is usually in large multi-agency situations, they will patch the radios so everybody can hear each other.
And you expected, because this was such a major event, that like previous major events, the radios would have been patched, correct?
Yes, sir.
You later learned at some point that they were not patched, correct?
Way later.
Gotcha. Monitoring your radio is not something that they tell you in the academy is like optional, correct?
No.
You're supposed to constantly monitor your radio because you'll be held accountable for whatever dispatch is saying, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what fellow officers are saying as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
And especially when you're reporting to the scene of an active shooting, you're going to pay particularly close attention to your radio, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because you're getting real-time intelligence that could be critical to your life when you're showing up at a scene, correct?
Yes, sir.
So on your way to Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School that horrible afternoon, you would have then, as you're monitoring your radio, heard dispatch announce at 2:26:31 to Coral Springs officers, there is an active shooter working at Douglas, multiple gunshots being fired. Do you remember hearing that?
Yes, sir.
You also heard Sergeant Bill Reed inquire as to whether there was an active shooter at Douglas High School, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then dispatch confirms right after he inquires, yes, shooting confirmed. We're getting phone calls now. Our 911 lines are blowing up. You heard all that, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you knew that before you even arrived at the school, correct?
Yes, sir.
What you didn't know when you arrived is how many shooter or shooters there were on campus, correct?
I did not know.
Tell the jurors what the +1 rule is and how you're trained in the +1 rule, please.
Okay. Anytime you respond to an active shooter, there can always
Castle Rock
be
versus
more
Gonzalez
than
is
one
irrelevant. Castle
shooter.
Rock speaks to civil
If you
cases, not
find
criminal.
one shooter on scene, you're going to have to maybe expect there's another one, and so on and so forth, 3 to 4. So
you remember thinking that as you're arriving on campus, even if you might have heard about one, you're constantly thinking there could be more, correct?
yes, sir.
And when you arrived, you did not know precisely where the shooter or shooters were located, correct?
I did not know.
When you arrive, you called to dispatch to get your arrival time, correct?
No, sir. I'm confused.
Were you told by dispatch that your arrival time was 2:27?
I called on the phone the following day to write my report.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And you learned that your arrival time was 2:27, correct?
Yes, sir.
That would have been 35 seconds before the shooter stopped firing, correct?
Yes, but may I explain?
Okay.
Okay. when the call came out, when Sergeant Bill Reed said that there was, asked if there was an active shooter, then the dispatcher confirmed. That's when I turned on my lights and sirens, and I said that I wanted to say 97 the area, but instead I just said 97. We're allowed to say 97 the area, which means we're close by. I was about maybe a mile.
Thank
and
you,
a
Ellen
half
Parker,
away
for
from
the gift
school.
memberships as always. Super
So you
appreciated.
arrive at
Really
the school,
appreciate all your
you're
support
armed
recently.
with
You've been a real
handgun
champion of
and
the channel, and I
M4
appreciate that.
rifle, correct?
Yes, sir.
Which were you holding in your hands?
The M4 rifle.
Why did you choose the M4 rifle as opposed to the pistol or the handgun?
It's a way more powerful gun, and I can shoot it from a long distance.
It would be more beneficial to you in an active shooter situation than a mere firearm, correct?
That is correct.
When you're at your school, and the name of your school is, what's it called?
Coral Glades High School.
Coral Glades High School. When you're at Coral Glades High School, do you walk around with the M4 rifle?
I do not, sir.
Are you even allowed to walk around with that big rifle?
No,
when you go
sir.
to school? How come?
It's just intimidating to the children. So what we do is we have a gun safe in my office where we keep the N4 on campus.
And some SROs will keep it in their car, correct?
Yes, sir.
And were you wearing a bulletproof vest that day?
I was wearing my normal police uniform
Do you usually wear your vest while you're on campus?
all the time, sir.
And when you arrived, was it pandemonium because kids were running around and there's gunfire everywhere, or was it just the opposite?
It was the opposite, sir.
How would you describe it to the jury when you get there?
It was
Around
very
2:27.
It was very eerie. When I got out of my car to load up my rifle, I looked west to see if there was anybody running or that I could talk to get information. I was also listening for gunfire, and I did not see any people on campus. I did not hear any gunfire. It was just silent.
Would it be fair that you've characterized it like a ghost town when you arrived?
Yes, sir.
Now, the first person that you encounter when you arrive on campus is campus monitor Andrew Medina. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And Medina gives you some real-time intelligence, correct?
Yes, he does.
He tells you that we are looking for a white male, correct?
Yes.
In a burgundy shirt,
A burgundy ROTC uniform shirt.
black pants,
Yes, sir.
and then he specifies that he was last seen around the 3-story building,
Correct.
also known as the 1200 building, correct?
That is correct.
And then he also tells you, or possibly the northeast parking lot, correct?
Correct.
You thought that information was so significant that you immediately then broadcast it on your Coral Springs radio, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you announce at 2:28:35, you recall saying, white male with ROTC uniform, burgundy shirt, correct?
Correct.
And then dispatch repeats, white male, ROTC uniform, burgundy shirt, correct?
Correct.
And then at 2:29, literally 25 seconds later, you announce, last seen in the 3-story building, north parking lot.
Yes, sir.
I want to understand what you meant in that moment with that statement. Because you agree that in the 3-story building, when you say last seen in the 3-story building, is different than north parking lot, correct?
They're two separate places on campus, sir.
Okay. So when you say last seen in 3-story building, north parking lot, you're actually referring to two different locations, correct?
Yes, sir.
So last seen in the 3-story building means last seen inside that building, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then
Thank you, Kane
north
Jones, for the
parking
super
lot
chat.
would have been by the 1200 building.
Appreciate
correct?
your
Yes, sir.
support.
So
Love our
by
UK friends. Thank
or
you for being
inside,
here.
Correct?
I wanted to use the 3-story building as my reference of go-to for everyone.
Is it fair to say, though, that you were essentially saying that it's either by or inside the 1200 building, correct?
Like I said, I was using it as a reference, but it could be correct.
Is it fair to say that Medina was not certain of the exact location of the shooter or shooters.
Just a
correct?
kindly reminder to
not.
please retweet the
You only knew a
link, the
general
pinned
area,
comment,
correct?
help share
Yes,
this
sir.
channel around, bring some
You didn't
attention to
know
the
at that
channel. We do
moment whether you
appreciate
ever
everyone who
transmitted
helps
that information over the school
with that kind of
radio,
thing.
so
It really
I
does
wanted
make a
to do
huge
that,
difference.
correct?
I didn't know that.
And nor did you order Medina, and this is non-judgment.
We don't have a
None of us
poll
saying
right
judgment.
now because in the
Just
past,
asking
having a
factually.
poll
You
has
never
interfered
ordered
with the
Medina
pinned
to
comment.
then get on the school
When we've had a
radio
poll, it's
and announce that
interfered with people
information,
being able to
correct?
see the
I did
pinned
not.
comment. So
And you
having to
certainly
pick
never
between one or the
conveyed all
other,
that
we went with the
information to
pinned
my
comment.
client at
So
any
that's
time,
why
correct?
there's no poll at
I
the
did
moment.
not.
Then 45 seconds after your transmission at 2:29:47, you heard dispatch announce. Dispatch advises that there are 3 victims down in room 1216 in the freshman building. You heard that, correct?
I did not, sir.
You don't dispute that that came over the Coral Springs police radio, correct?
At the time, I was under high stress, adrenaline, actively looking for,
That's a good
a
answer for the
possible
defense
shooter
too,
in the
right?
parking lot.
Because if he's
So I
under
may not have
adrenaline
caught
stress, he didn't hear
everything that
something,
was on the
therefore
radio, sir.
also his client. So that works for him too.
At 2:31:31.
So basically what we're getting out of
Radio.
this, right, we're getting
I'm
some
on the
confusion,
east side of the 3-story building, near the
unclarity.
parking lot with my long gun, correct?
Yes, sir.
Also getting the
Why
fact
is
that
it
he had a
important for you
long
to
gun
tell
and
your
the
fellow
defendant
officers
didn't.
Where you're located.
Also, he had body armor,
So there's
defendant
not
didn't.
officer on, officer fire, and it also gives them another reference of, where to respond.
So when an officer announces on their police radio, 1200 building or parking lot or giving a location, they're being of service to their fellow officers, correct?
Yes, sir.
To better serve the very children that they're there to assist, correct?
Yes, sir.
And faculty and staff, correct?
Yes, sir.
You immediately continue in that 2:31:31 transcript. You say, I will let you know where it is. It's the 3-story.
I'm not objecting here, sir. Yeah, that's his thing.
Do you recall getting on your police radio and saying the following? I will let you know where it is. It's the 3-story building at the northeast corner. It's considered the freshman building. Do you remember saying that?
I don't remember saying that, but if it's on the transcript, I
Well,
must
getting
have
the
said it.
microphone levels
That
right is always a
information
challenge, but I'll
you
turn
never
down the
conveyed
trial
to
and
my
hope that we
client, correct?
get the balance
I
right.
did not.
It went out over your
Which is
radio
higher and which needs to be made higher and which needs to be made lower.
you believed was patched with BSO, correct?
I had no idea if the radios were patched yet.
But you learn literally 7.5 minutes later at 2:39:18, when dispatch tells you, we need to get these radios.
Higher on the
patched with
trial, my
BSO."
volume is too
You
low.
heard that, right?
All right, so I'll turn the volume up and then I'll turn my
Did you or
mic
did you
down.
not hear dispatch inform you that the radios needed to be patched with BSO?
All right, turn my mic down to about quarter. Hopefully that'll work.
Mr. Agash, what you're reading from is not in evidence, so you can ask this witness direct questions, but I can't.
I
give you
hate
reading to the jury
balancing
items that are not
audio.
In evidence, go ahead.
Because I can't hear what you
Did
can
you
hear,
ever
so it's a total
hear
fucking pain in
anyone
the ass.
inform you that we're like working 2 separate operations unless the radios get patched?
Objection, same here, same objection.
That is sustained.
Did you believe if the radios were not patched, that you would be working like 2 separate investigations?
But thank you for bringing it to my attention
That
so that
thought
I could
never
fix
crossed
it, because
my
I
mind,
can't
sir.
hear it. So I depend on you guys to help me get the volume levels right.
Medina then drives you in a golf cart and drops you off at the northeast parking lot. Isn't that correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
And with all the information that you had, once you get to the parking lot, you don't run right into the 1200 building, did you, sir?
No, I did not.
You knew that a shooting had taken place, correct?
Yes, sir.
You must have known potentially that there were people that might have been harmed in the 1200 building, correct?
I did not know that at the time, sir.
Now, after you arrive, based on the information that you had a very general idea of where you thought the shooter or shooters might have been, correct?
Yes, sir.
You certainly couldn't narrow it down to just the 1200 building, correct?
No, sir, I could not.
It included a very large area of campus, did it not?
It did.
So when you get there, one of the possibilities on your mind is that the shooter or shooters could have been inside the 1200 building, correct?
The first thought when I got to the
Yeah,
parking lot
fix my microphone
was
so it'd be nice
to
and
focus on the
correct.
northeast
Make it look
parking
nice
lot.
for me at
I
least.
understand.
I'm a
My
professional.
question is, in terms of where you're narrowing it down, right? One of the possibilities in your mind is that the shooter or shooters could have possibly been inside the 1200 building, correct?
Yes, sir.
Also, the shooter or shooters could have been on top of the 1200 building, correct?
The shooter or shooters could have been anywhere in that general area.
I understand, but I want to break down and you
Oh.
tell me if any of the places that I'm mentioning to you were something you completely eliminated or whether that was in the realm of possibility, okay?
Okay, sir.
So if you believe that the shooter or shooters could have been on top of the 1200 building, that would have included all the way west of the 1200 building, correct?
Yes, sir.
Could have been all the way east, closest to you, correct?
Yes, sir.
And could have included all the way in between as a possibility, correct?
Yes, sir.
And this building, if I told you it was 73 yards long, 3/4 of a football field, is that consistent with what you saw?
Yes, sir. It's a big building.
You also believe that the shooter or shooters could have been on any of the sides of the 1200 building, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it could have been on
We don't
the
have any
north
information about
side,
that yet.
which extends 73 yards, correct?
Yes, sir.
That
South
evidence has
side,
not yet been
correct?
brought into trial.
sir.
And by the way, the areas around the north and south side, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then the west side, which you couldn't see from your position, correct?
I could not see it, correct.
And let me just specify, you can identify for us. I'm showing you what is already in evidence as Defense Exhibit 1. Is this the west side of the building?
That is, it's not the east side.
Correct. So this was the opposite side from you, correct?
Yes, sir.
You couldn't see Aaron Feiss on the ground from where you were positioned, correct?
I could not.
But the shooter or shooters could have easily been on the west side of the building, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was in your state of mind as you arrived there, correct?
Yes, sir.
You also couldn't rule out any of the neighboring parking lot areas, correct?
I could not.
In fact, that was actively one of the places you thought the shooter or shooters could have been located, correct?
Yes, sir.
If I can show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit F, and if I can approach, show us if this is the 1200 building and this is the 1300 building. There are parking lots on the north side of those buildings. Could you include that area as where the shooter or shooters may have been located?
You could.
Could you also include to the right of the 1200 building, we'll call that northeast, could you include that parking lot?
Yes, sir.
And then you certainly could include this would be kind of, how would you describe this parking lot? Because this is the one that you
That's
were,
like the main parking lot in front of the school.
okay. Would you consider that as in play or not?
I didn't at the time, sir.
Fair enough. Describe for the jurors how large these parking lot areas are.
It's very large, sir. It's a couple rows filled with students' cars. I believe they refer to it as the senior lot.
Right. And I mean, this school has 3,300 kids, you're aware of that, correct?
Yes, sir.
This parking lot is like potentially football field large, correct?
Yes.
And there are numerous places that shooter or shooters could be located, correct?
Yes, sir.
Lots of places for them to hide because of the cars in the parking lot, correct?
Yes, sir.
You also, when you get to the scene, don't eliminate the possibility that the shooter or shooters could be in a neighboring building, correct?
Correct.
Like the 1300 building that we just looked at, that was also in play. You couldn't rule out the 1300 building, correct?
I couldn't see that from my vantage point, but it could have been a possibility, yes, sir.
Which then means the courtyard area between the 12 and 1300 building was also a possibility when you approach in the parking lot, correct?
Yes, sir.
So this wasn't a small, restricted area that you were considering, correct?
No, sir, it was very large.
Would cover massively east and west, north and south, numerous football fields as a geographical area, correct?
Yes, sir.
With buildings and within the building,
Yeah.
numerous
So
places
same
for
ideas we've
someone
heard before
to
from the
hide,
defense
correct?
lawyer, basically going to how big this campus
And that's
is,
why then you
how
don't
much
just
ground there
run
is
to
to
a
cover,
specific location, correct?
confusion in the radio
Correct.
traffic, difference in equipment profiles.
Now, without question, you are trained, and I think this was your testimony on Friday, that if you have an active shooter or shooters, and you know precisely where the shooter or shooters are located, it's your responsibility to go after wherever he or she goes, correct?
That is correct.
But that wasn't your scenario here, correct?
It was not.
You did not know precisely where the shooter or shooters were located, correct?
I did not.
And even after listening to your radio on the way to the school, correct?
Yes, sir.
And even after speaking with Andrew Medina, correct?
Yes, sir.
And even after getting to the scene and analyzing everything, correct?
Correct.
And even after, we'll get to it, your chat with Deputy Peterson, correct?
Yes, sir.
And after continuing to monitor what you're seeing, you still didn't know precisely where the shooter or shooters were located, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So you followed your training, didn't you, sir?
Yes, I did.
It's critical to follow how you've been trained, correct?
It is.
You got to the point of what we call last reference, correct?
Correct.
Tell the jurors what last reference is.
The information that Campus Monitor Medina gave me was the 3-story building or the northeast parking lot. So I gave my police department the reference of the 3-story building as that's where we need to go.
And so physically, you got to the closest parking lot area that you can get to the 1200 building, correct?
Correct.
And you positioned yourself literally in shouting distance from my client who was to your left, correct?
That's correct.
You didn't even need your radios to communicate. You could speak to him, he was so close to you, correct?
We're about 40 yards apart.
But no difficulty hearing what he was saying to you, correct?
That's correct.
And you relaying information to him, correct?
Correct.
And then what you do, once you get to the closest reference point, is you take a position of cover, do you not?
I do, sir.
Now, they train you
Thank you. I appreciate the
not to
compliment.
take a wild
You see?
guess and just start to run in any direction, correct?
Correct.
That wouldn't have been tactically sound in this scenario, correct?
It would not have.
Tell the jurors why.
Thank
if
you
you've got
for saying
all
I
these
look
different
pretty.
options. You don't just say, I don't know, he could be in the 1300 building or the 1200 building.
We've
or
not seen the jury
football
yet
field, or-
today.
Let me just start running. Why don't you do that?
If there's no sound of gunfire and you've reached the last point of reference, there's really no reason for you to be running all over campus.
And or what happens if you hear gunfire, but you have no idea where it's coming from? Same scenario, correct?
I would still try my best to respond to the gunfire, maybe a little more of a tactical type of search. It would be more difficult, but I would still make an attempt.
Girl
to
at the
find
front,
it,
I
sir.
believe, is
I
the court
understand.
reporter.
Your scenario was you had no idea where to possibly go, correct?
That's correct.
And if that's the scenario, if you just don't know and your possibility covers football fields and football fields, what do? You take a tactical position of cover, don't you, sir?
Correct.
And that's what you did, didn't you, sir?
Yes, sir.
At no point did you ever believe, my goodness, we're dealing with one shooter, correct?
Correct.
That's inside the 1200 building, correct?
Correct.
Killing innocent children, correct?
Correct.
That's not the thought in your mind while you're taking a tactical position of cover, correct?
It's not.
Obviously, if you thought that, you're trained to go in, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, we've been calling a position of cover and a tactical position of cover. Explain to the jurors what you call it, what you did that day.
So when Campus Monitor Medina let me out of the golf cart, I immediately ran to what's called a position of cover. I used a tree trunk and an SUV. I basically used the frame of the car to protect my body.
This was a black SUV, correct?
It was, sir.
And using a concrete wall, for example, would provide the same type of protection, correct? correct?
Yes, sir.
If there was a concrete wall, you would have gotten behind that concrete wall, correct?
Yes, sir.
But there was no concrete wall, you used a tree and an SUV, correct?
That's correct.
And you were as close as 30 yards to that 1200 building, correct?
That is correct.
And when you consciously chose to take a position of cover and not run in, that was a decision that you made based upon the limited information that you had, correct?
I stopped between the tree trunk and the SUV to assess my next possible tactical move.
Because you don't just go running in without thinking, correct?
That's correct.
Why, explain to the jurors, why you wouldn't just stand out in the open like this?
We didn't know where the shooter was at, so I'm not gonna risk getting shot. The smartest thing to do was to communicate to Deputy Peterson behind a tactical position of cover.
Now, there's a difference between cowarding and taking a tactical position of cover.
That's correct.
Explain to the jurors what cowarding looks like.
Cowarding would be ducking, hiding, not having your gun out. What was the other one, sir?
That would be cowarding, right? When you're not taking your
Correct.
gun out.
I forgot what
right?
the other one was.
Tactical position of cover.
Okay.
What does that look like?
Okay. In this example, it would be have your gun out, looking around for possible shooters, assessing the situation, talking on your radio, giving out intel.
When you take your tactical position of cover, you have a visual on Scot Peterson, do you not?
I do.
He is off to your left, correct?
That's correct.
And the 1200 building's right in front of you, correct?
Correct.
And so you're looking at Scot Peterson, and you got a chance to look at him for at least 20 to 30 minutes, did you not, sir?
I did.
You could see him the entire time that you're there. Is that correct, sir?
That is correct.
Describe the position that you see my client in.
When I first arrived to the tactical position of cover, I looked to my left and I saw Deputy Peterson with his gun drawn in a low ready position. He was using the concrete column as cover, and he was looking east and west.
Okay. Judge, with the court's permission, I'd like him to demonstrate for the jurors what he saw.
Sure.
Thank you. Could you use one of the walls, whichever you're convenient with, and show us, do you have, it might be one of these if it's big enough.
If this was a complete concrete wall, okay, he was in a position like this and looking like this, and then he and I were talking in this direction.
Got it. So he has his gun out. In that demonstration, he's got his gun out.
Yes, this is called a low ready position.
Okay. And they train you to be in that position, correct?
There's different positions, but this is one of them, yes.
And I also, again, I don't want to supplement the record. I saw you moving your head back and forth. Is that what I saw?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you saw my client doing?
Yes, I did.
And you saw him not fixated on one particular building. You saw him looking east and west, correct?
That is correct.
In fact, you can sit down. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
In fact, you saw him, your testimony is, you saw him looking all around, correct?
I didn't use the word all around. It was east and west.
Okay.
Well, it covers a lot of ground,
And
but okay, fair enough.
You
I'll
also
bull on
saw
it.
him going from shoulder to shoulder, correct?
That's correct.
Both monitoring his radios, correct?
Correct.
And you're in the unique position of also being a school resource officer like my client,
Yes, I am.
correct? So you have both a police radio, correct?
Correct.
And a school radio, correct?
That is correct.
So you've had thousands of times where you're monitoring both your school and your police radio, correct?
That's correct.
That's not
Love
easy
the way
to
he
do.
gestures
It's
to
not.
show the
Explain to the
difference.
jurors how that could be difficult.
Like right here would be my police radio. On my right shoulder, I use my school radio. The police radio is giving out city information, and the school radio is giving out the local school information.
So you'd have to be multitasking, correct?
Correct.
And then let's add another scenario. Have there been times in your career where you're listening to your police radio, you're listening to your school radio, and you're speaking on both?
Sir, there's been times where I've said my police call number on my school radio, which doesn't apply, and I've done it vice versa.
And it's worse in stressful situations, correct?
Correct.
But now let's add another thing. Has there ever been a time where you're listening on your school radio and you're listening to your police radio, and you're talking on both, but you're also trying to pay attention to what's going on in front of you.
That would be multitasking.
Yeah,
It'd be pretty hard.
good questions.
Difficult.
Tell the jurors
Good
how
questions.
things
Going
are
to
going
confusion,
be setting you up for failure. next
going to different information, going to
Your
too much
attention would
information,
be
information
taken away
overload.
from the threat that's out
Campus
there,
is big, lots of
possibly.
building, lots of different information,
front of
lots of
you or
information coming in
around
from
you.
different places.
It's also what we call divided attention, correct?
Correct.
DUI officers are trained to ensure that
This
people
defense
are
lawyer
not
is very
driving
good on
drunk
cross.
and having divided attention, correct?
That is correct.
Sometimes he's gotten a little bit away from
Because of
himself,
having divided attention,
but he overall
you
is
can miss
basically
transmissions,
textbook.
correct?
That is
In
correct.
fact, that happened to you. That was the explanation you offered earlier as to why you missed 3 kids being down in classroom 1216, correct?
That's correct.
You can miss things that are all going on in front of you, correct?
Correct.
The prosecution has also been very, very
You
good
can
on
miss
direct
both
too.
school and police
Both sets of attorneys have been
transmissions,
very
correct?
positive.
Correct.
And you can even say things not exactly as you intended because you've got divided attention, correct?
Correct.
So I want to return to when you take a position of cover, correct?
Correct.
You don't go into the 1200 building, correct?
That's correct.
Now, you know at that point when you're doing that, the shooting had just finished and that there could be kids bleeding out, correct?
That was a possibility, yes, sir. But I did not know what was going on inside the building at the time.
But one of the possibilities is that kids could be bleeding out, correct?
That's correct.
And you made a choice not to go in. And I don't say this with judgment, I'm just getting facts,
Judge,
okay?
I object to counsel testifying.
Yeah, that's sustained. Go ahead, ask your next question. sir.
Factually, though, knowing that kids could potentially be bleeding out, you made the choice to stay covered, correct?
Based upon the information that I received from Deputy Peterson,
Shouldn't training teach
factored
which
into
channel to
why I
prioritize?
stayed
I'm not
in
sure that's
tactical
100%
position of
possible,
cover.
Let's talk
to
about
be
it.
honest.
So you're in a
Situation
position
might
of
be,
cover, you want to know what
I'm not
my
sure it's
client
necessarily
knows,
possible to
correct?
know in advance
And that factored into your decision making.
which channel's
correct?
going to provide the most
And
important
you've known Scott for
information.
years, correct?
I've known him for 7 years.
As far as you know, he's never lied to you, correct?
That's correct.
Honorable officer, correct?
Yes, sir.
Decent, dedicated, correct?
Objection is irrelevance, Your Honor.
No, that's overruled. Go ahead, sir, you can answer the
You
question.
can answer that.
Yes, he had a good track record.
Okay. And you worked investigations and things together too, correct?
We did.
Drug cases, correct?
Mostly gang activity with some drug cases, yes.
No issues ever with him cowarding, correct?
No, sir.
Or him being a liar to you, correct?
No, sir.
Just the opposite, correct?
That's correct.
So when my client shares with you in real time, when you get there, and you say, hey, what's up, what do we got? And my client tells you he hasn't heard gunfire in a few minutes,
That's correct.
you believe that, correct?
Correct.
And that was your understanding too, because you hadn't heard gunfire in the couple of minutes that it took you to get to where you were,
That is
correct?
correct.
This isn't, well,
He also then, number two, he makes it very clear to you that
it
he
might be
doesn't
character
know
evidence.
the
If
precise
there's
location
contrary
of the
character
shooter or
evidence,
shooters, correct?
then yeah, maybe we
correct.
can bring that in,
Now,
but
when
I
he
don't know
said
if it
that to
exists.
you, did you think he was lying to you?
No, sir.
You believed it, correct?
I did.
The manner in which he said it, the words that he used, and the energy that he put behind it, you absolutely believed it to the core, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the other thing he tells you, as you're facing him, correct?
Correct.
He says, watch your back. The shooter may be hiding behind you in the parking lot, correct?
That's correct.
So you believed he genuinely was looking out for you, correct?
I did.
And you also genuinely believe that the shooter, if you can show us where he's referencing, if you could stand up, please. Show us approximately where you were positioned and then which parking lot he's referring to.
Deputy Peterson is right here.
Okay?
I am,
That would be between the corner of the 7 and 800 building, correct?
yes, sir.
Okay?
I'm just gonna say I am right here by the tree
Okay?
and the SUV, so we're communicating back and forth.
Uh-huh.
So somebody could be hiding in this entire area right here based on his intel.
And this lot right here is huge, correct?
It's very big.
Like football field huge, correct?
Objection is asked and answered, Your Honor.
That's sustained.
Okay, you can have a seat.
I do like him trying to repeat
And
points
you
that
thought
are
that he was
favorable to
being
him
of
until he gets cut off.
assistance to
You
you.
have to be
Correct?
careful with
When you
it,
said
but
that.
so
Yes,
far
sir.
this morning it's going okay.
And at no point did you think that he was making that up. You believed it, correct?
That's correct.
And in that parking lot, when he said that, did you take another glance behind you? Did you look?
I immediately turned around and I grabbed my rifle and immediately started to scan the parking lot. I also stood up on the curb to make myself taller so I could see over everything.
And in your mind, especially when you're getting that real-time intelligence from my client, you're believing the shooter or shooters could be anywhere, correct?
That's correct.
Now, shortly thereafter, a team of Coral Springs officers enter on the west side of the 1200 building, correct?
That's correct, but I did not know that at the time.
That was my next question. You couldn't see, from where you and Scott were positioned, you could not see the west side door where they entered, correct? You couldn't see this,
No,
correct?
sir.
You're somewhere on the other side of this building, all the way down here. You couldn't see that they made like a six-man entry into the west side, correct?
I could not see that.
So you certainly didn't know to join them to go in, correct?
I did not know.
And did they announce over your radio, hey, we're going in? These are Coral Springs officers. Would they have announced on the radio at the time, hey, we're going into the 1200 building?
They could have, but I don't know. I didn't pick it up.
So you believe it's possible that they might have announced it or not,
There's a
correct?
possibility.
But even if you did hear it, it was your determination at that moment to still not join them and stand your ground, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, based on the intel that I was provided.
Because you wanted to wait till you had a few more guys to show up before you left that position of cover, correct?
Correct, because at the time it was just me and Deputy Peterson on the east side of the school.
And that wasn't enough for you to go searching on your own, correct?
Correct. The feeling that I had was if I left my tactical position of cover,
Yes.
that possibly Deputy Peterson could be exposed. And also I wanted to protect guys as they were starting to come into the area around us.
Okay. So let's talk about that. Now you do see a group of officers start to go in on the east side of the 1200 building, correct?
Correct.
For sure you saw those officers, correct?
I did.
And then you did not leave your position of cover to go join them to go in, isn't that correct?
That's correct. I wanted to join them, but again, if I would have left my position of tactical cover, the parking lot still would be unsecure.
You even told Scott that a search team of guys were coming. They were on their way to join you and Scott, correct?
I did, because from his view vantage point, he couldn't see them coming in as a stack.
And even as these officers are entering the east side, you're consciously believing that there could be gunfire that could be coming from another area that could cause that entry team harm, correct?
Yeah, it was my concern that it was a possibility that somebody could pop up and start shooting.
You would describe this situation as very fluid, correct?
I just dealt with the situations as it was going on.
In other words, your level of awareness changes based upon the information that you receive,
Yeah,
correct?
Catherine,
That
I
is
caught
correct,
that
sir.
too. I was wondering if someone else was going to make
Now,
the
you're
comment.
aware that during the shooting, since you were very close to my client, that he ordered the assistant principal to go in to watch surveillance video to find out where the shooter or shooters were located, correct?
I did not know that.
You did hear my client yelling things that were being relayed to him, correct?
I don't recall Deputy Peterson ever telling anyone to review video.
Fair enough. Do you hear him saying the shooter may be on the second or third floor?
I never heard that, sir.
Okay. Certainly that information could not be ascertained by you by looking at the building, correct?
That's correct.
I mean, you can't see in the windows, correct?
I could not.
You do know that somebody's watching a video because you hear someone say, hey, we're watching video, he's in the building.
Objection
You
is
did
to
hear
hearsay,
that.
Your Honor.
Yeah, that's sustained.
At any point, did it become aware to you, did it become known to you that he was in the building?
Yes, somebody on the radio said we're reviewing real-time footage that he's in the building.
And so even when you hear that he's in the building, you do not leave your position of cover to go in the building, correct?
At that time, there were already a lot of officers going in the building. So from where I was, I took a different position of cover.
So when you learn and you hear someone say, we're watching video, he's in the building, that's when in your mind you're going, goodness, I could be facing sniper fire, correct?
Yeah, it was a concern that the shooter may start firing down from the windows onto us.
And you and Scot Peterson, who was standing near you, you were in the most vulnerable positions for that, correct?
I was, yes.
And Scott was as well, correct?
He could have been. I mean, he was still we're still 40 yards apart in our same positions.
You referred to it earlier, but I want to go into it a little deeper about how stressful of a situation this was, correct?
Correct.
Not as calm as this courtroom as we're reviewing your actions, correct?
Correct.
Or Scott's actions, correct?
Correct.
Describe for them with words just how stressful it was when you got there, which would have been after the gunfire, correct?
Correct.
And after the students were running all around on the campus, correct?
That was later after this video.
And would have been after the fire alarm went off, correct?
I never heard any fire alarm at the
Okay.
school, sir.
So we're talking about your scenario, and even then you thought it was extremely stressful of a situation, right?
Yes, sir.
Describe for the jurors what you were feeling in that moment.
When I was responding to this incident, I'll go back to when I was driving my car and they told me that this incident was happening at Douglas High School. Adrenaline immediately kicked in. When I arrived at the school and rode on the golf cart with campus monitor Medina, I was starting to mentally prepare myself for a possible gun battle. And then as soon as he dropped me off in the north lot, I basically had another bit of adrenaline. And then when later on, when they started bringing out deceased students, and I got close up with the deceased student, more adrenaline. So the adrenaline, the stress, the constant looking and searching and wondering, it eventually starts to, I mean, you're trained, but it starts to take its toll.
In fact, you had what you describe as at least 2 to 3 adrenaline dumps at the time, correct?
That's correct. I've described all of them.
Okay. And while you're having an adrenaline dump, you can forget things, correct?
It's called auditory exclusion.
Tell the jurors about auditory exclusion.
When you're so in the moment and you have adrenaline, there's going to be some things that you hear that are distinct, and then there's going to be other things that you just, it's happening, but you're not hearing it.
So even the sound of gunfire, as loud as it can be, auditory exclusion could cause you not to hear shots, correct?
That could be correct.
And also tell the jurors about tunnel vision. Did you experience that as well?
I did. So tunnel vision is kind of where, I'll refer to it as this. It's like HD in the center of your eyes, and then around your peripheral vision is foggy.
So what could happen when you have tunnel vision? You're focused on something. What can happen in your periphery?
You could miss something.
Okay. So if you're staring, let's say, west, and let's say kids are running out of a building, you could miss someone on your periphery, correct?
That's a possibility.
And you specifically experienced that, correct? On that day, correct?
I experienced tunnel vision, correct.
But some would say, well, you're tough cops. Doesn't training just eliminate all the stress that you deal with?
Objection is counsel testifying.
Well, hold on, I didn't hear the question yet. What's the question, please?
Doesn't training just eliminate all of these adrenaline dumps or auditory exclusions or tunnel vision? Doesn't just training get rid of all that? Can you answer, Judge?
We asked a different question. You
Yeah.
still have the same objection?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, sir, you may answer the question.
Okay, we're human beings, so we're gonna have those feelings. Training helps out tremendously, but like I said, we're human, and sometimes our human emotions take over.
And you experienced all of those experiences, adrenaline dump, auditory exclusion, and tunnel
Yep.
vision, standing just
Really
a
nice
short distance
job
away
on
from
Cross,
the
really
time.
getting this out in
It
pieces,
was over different periods of my entry
Talking
into
about
the school.
difficulty hearing,
Now, you
like
never
this
went
is
into the
different
1200 building the
radios. I have a
entire
school
time you were there,
radio, I have
correct?
a cop
I did not.
radio.
And you
Get these
did
adrenaline
see
jumps.
at
I'm
least
getting
a
talked to by
victim when
dispatch.
a law
It's a
enforcement
huge
officer asked you to assist
campus,
in putting that
uncertainty,
victim on an
unclarity,
correct?
fog of
That's
war.
That was the only time you ever saw victims, correct?
Good stuff.
No, after that, I rescued 2 female students after that.
The first time, however, that you learned that there were victims inside the 1200 building was after you left the school, correct?
I don't know what you mean by that, sir.
The first time that you became aware that there were victims inside the 1200 building was sometime after you left the school, and you learned that there were victims inside the 1200 building. You didn't know it when you were there, correct?
Yeah, during the process of us being there, the victim toll kept mounting. So, yeah, at the end of it, I didn't know that there were.
I don't know what evidence the state has because
34.
they haven't presented it, but unless
So,
they
yes,
have
I did
video
not.
of this
I
guy like
did
cowering
learn that
behind a car
after
for
I
like
left the
40
school.
minutes or something.
Shifting gears, you're a school resource officer.
Or someone who
at
can
Parkland
say, yeah,
High
I saw him
School,
for a half
correct?
hour just
Yes,
not
sir.
doing
Before
anything.
that, you were a school resource officer at Eagle Ridge Elementary, correct?
Correct,
Both you and Scott
You know.
Peterson were school resource officers on the day of the shooting, correct?
correct,
Now, a school resource officer is a police officer, correct?
correct,
Who is assigned to a school instead of working out on the street, correct?
correct,
You guys train with all the other officers, correct?
correct.
The training material is the same, correct?
For certain things, not for our agencies, but for certain trainings that we would do collectively, yes.
You have the same uniforms, correct?
No, sir.
You school resource officers have different, in Coral Springs, the school resource officers have different uniforms?
Well, color-wise, we're blue and BSO is green.
Oh, no, I got that. I
Okay.
meant. my
Sorry.
bad. No, maybe it was me.
Yeah,
All Coral Springs police officers who work the street have the same color uniform as the school resource officers from Coral Springs.
that is correct. We're dressed the same.
The badges look the same, correct?
Correct,
Same bosses and superiors, correct?
correct,
Same place that you get your checks from, correct?
correct.
Now, a school resource officer is different than, let's say, a school monitor, a campus monitor, correct?
That is correct.
You have those at your high school, correct?
Yes, sir.
And they don't work for the police department, correct?
No, they don't.
They work for the school, correct?
That is correct.
They don't have arrest powers, correct?
Correct.
And they don't go to the police academy, correct?
They do not.
You don't work for the school system, correct?
I do not.
Teachers don't give you orders, correct?
That's correct.
Administrators don't tell you how to do your job, correct?
They do not.
The principal can't order you to do something.
That's correct.
And you have arrest powers over teachers,
Correct.
administrators,
Correct.
faculty,
Correct.
the principal,
Correct.
and over students, correct?
Correct.
Have you ever conducted criminal investigations at either of the schools that you worked for?
Yes, I have.
You do that quite often, correct?
Correct.
Kids have, give us some examples, just so I can use this.
In the public school system, we have issues with fighting, with some weapons. There's some other things. We have some child abuse cases, sex cases. So those are some of the main ones.
And also with drugs, correct?
Correct.
So drugs and weapons, kids bring those to school, correct?
Yes, they do.
So do you ever conduct searches
Yes, sir.
And searches.
I
Are
think
you
that
permitted
this
to
trial,
simply go
depending on
up
how
to
it
any student
goes,
on a hunch and
will
start searching
heavily
their backpack?
influence
No, sir.
Uvalde,
Because, tell the jurors
depending
why.
on
You have to have
factors, but
levels of suspicion, reasonable
I
suspicion,
think this will
probable
heavily
cause. You
influence
have to
the
follow
decisions
those
to prosecute for
levels.
Uvalde.
And do you mind if I ask you, are you a parent?
I am.
Okay. The Constitution doesn't prevent you from going up to your kid's pocket and putting your hand in there and taking something out if you suspect on a hunch they might have something, correct?
As their father, I would be allowed to do that.
A little different, right?
Yes,
Your rights as a police officer is very different than the right of yours as a parent, correct?
that is correct.
And you said you have 3,000 kids at Coral Glades High School, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you and or the other SROs at the school ensure that all kids are properly nourished each day?
No,
Objection to relevance, Your Honor.
I think it's going to show the difference between a cop and a police officer.
I have nothing to do with nourishment, sir.
Do you ever assemble all the kids together and make sure that they're properly hydrated?
No, sir.
Do you ever bring the students into your office and stare at them physically to ensure that they don't have any bruises on them?
I would only do that for a possible battery or child abuse case, but
Right.
not on an everyday, no.
So you're not making routine inspections on these kids to ensure that they're not suffering abuse from somewhere, correct?
That's correct.
That's not your job, correct?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
That's not your job, correct? To ensure that every kid on that campus isn't facing possible abuse somewhere, correct?
If they are facing abuse, I would investigate it.
But of course, but you don't proactively look at each kid to ensure that they're free from any abuse, correct?
Most of those cases come to me.
Got it. Have you ever read Miranda to any students?
Yes, sir.
And you would say to them, you have the right to remain silent, correct?
Correct.
Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, correct?
Correct.
And you would want them to waive Miranda so that they can then speak with you, correct?
Correct.
And if they speak to you and say something incriminating, you intend to put that on a report and will be used against them, correct?
That's correct.
After you've read, how many times have you read Miranda to students over your 15-year career as an SRO?
I couldn't give you a definitive number.
Right, but a large number, correct?
Correct.
On any of those occasions, after reading Miranda, did you ever stop and say to the student, hold on. Don't answer that question because it could adversely affect you. It could affect your future. It could cause you to get arrested. Have you ever taken that role on?
Objection is to compound and counsel testifying.
It's sustained as the compound. Go ahead, sir, ask your next question.
After reading Miranda, did you then ever tell a student why they shouldn't answer those questions?
I've never done that.
So yeah, distinguishing between his role and a parent's role.
Have you ever heard the sound of gunfire outside?
I have.
In fact, your shooting range is outdoors, isn't it?
That's correct.
Are there any buildings in close proximity to the shooting range?
The shooting range is in an industrial park, so there's some large warehouses around the vicinity of the range.
Is it always possible to pinpoint the exact location of the origination of gunfire?
You'll hear a very large bang and an echo.
So you have echo on your range because there's buildings in the area, correct?
That's correct.
And what are your buildings made of?
Concrete.
What are the buildings made of on Marjory Stoneman Douglas?
Concrete.
So you know firsthand that when you're shooting outdoors around concrete buildings, there could be a pronounced echo, correct?
That's correct.
And that could interfere with your ability to know precisely where the shots are coming from, correct?
Correct, it could interfere.
Do you remember Friday when you identified Scott's voice on some of the dispatch transmissions?
I did.
I'd like you to identify a few more, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right, with the state's help? Let's go to 22538 first.
Your Honor, we'll need the
Yep.
And I'm finishing up, sir. I just have a few more areas.
So the fact that police officers are not parents
Oh, you need,
Judge, I
sounds like a potential point for a closing point to me.
just want the audio.
oh, you just want the audio.
And I just see one of the jurors raising their hands, Judge.
I can tease that. I can sort of see where the evidence is coming that he's using.
Never mind, it wasn't on. Fixed now, sorry.
What does the state have in this guy?
Court deputy unit, tell me when.
Unclear so far. The state's evidence is not good so far. It's been emotionally heavy, but it has not been factually heavy in terms of incriminating the officer. So far, we do not have really any information to convict, at least in my opinion.
225.
And we'll see how it progresses.
I want you to listen to this and tell me if you recognize the voice.
Thanks for doing route. They started with firecrackers that went out. It's going to be the 300 building. It's going to be right off of Holmberg Road by the senior lot.
I'm planning on covering the entire trial based on people's interest in it.
Okay, that wasn't the one. We're going to keep going.
If people are interested in it, yes, I'll cover the whole thing.
Keep the school locked down, gentlemen.
That's Scot Peterson,
That was Scot Peterson saying, let's get the school locked down, correct?
correct?
Under the circumstances, thinking that there might have been people wandering around with guns or sniper fire, that would have been a prudent thing to order, correct?
Correct.
And that would have been for the benefit of the students and faculty and staff and police officers, correct?
Correct.
All right, 22640, please.
Started with traffic anywhere. So I got more students running west towards the football field. We're going to Bravo. I hear shots fired.
All right, did you hear that voice saying, I hear shots fired?
Yes, sir.
Who did that sound like?
Scot Peterson.
Okay. And you're trained that when you hear shots fired, to announce that over your radio, correct? And not to keep that to yourself, correct?
In this example, I would, if I say shots fired, I better be running towards it.
I understand. And that presupposes that you know where to run, correct? All right,
Yes, sir.
if you don't know where to run, I'm focused on announcing it over the radio and letting people know you're hearing additional shots. That's being of service, correct?
That's correct.
And that's how you're trained, correct?
That's correct.
22730.
Shots fired. Shots. Hey, Julie 3, make sure I have a unit over in the front of the school. Make sure nobody comes inside the school.
Who said that? Make sure that nobody comes inside the school,
That was
correct?
Deputy Peterson.
And he's further emphasizing, is he not, to keep the school locked down, correct?
Correct.
Which again, you still find prudent, correct?
Yes.
And consistent with your training, correct?
Yes, sir.
228, please.
Unit to shut down Holmberg, advise.
I just want to build a, and I'm trying to get open, the fence open.
Building 13 and 900 building.
Now,
Alex, do not approach the 12 or 1300 buildings. Stay at least 500 feet away at this point.
okay, pause for a second. Who was that voice? Who said between the 12 and 1300 buildings, stay at least 500 feet away? Who said that?
That was Deputy Peterson.
Okay. And now 22902.
Stay away from floor.
Down.
Side.
Jerry, does he know where the shooter is?
That voice, pause for a moment. The next one will be 245. That voice you just heard saying, Perry, does he know where the shooter is?
That was Deputy Peterson.
No doubt in your mind, it was Deputy Peterson asking Perry, Deputy Perry, does he know where the shooter is?
Correct.
And finally, 245, please. I'd like to have 245. Thank you.
Just for the record, what is, I'd just like to put on the record a piece of evidence that the state entered. It's, what number is it? This is state's 8.
proceed to the point that council wants it on, please.
Can I make the court feed louder? No. No, that's as good as it gets. Can I make a banner? Changing the banner sometimes causes the browser to crash. I'm reluctant to put up a banner because it
17
causes
Juliet 3.
problems.
17 Bravo 3, 17 Bravo 4.
Juliet 3, we have possible, could be Parkland, because I think we got shots fired. Witness off. I'm going to be bringing the witness back to the CT for additional debrief.
Can we get a race at a the sawgrass on the Coral Springs side?
1200, I need to come in here.
48.
That's 35. We're looking for 245. Here we go.
Reference. Canine 500. No canine
I
should
need
be
a
tracking
caffeine
unless they're
pill.
coming and meeting with me
Be right back.
on the north side of the school parking lot entrance so we can coordinate. Repeat, no canine from any agency should be deploying unless they 56 with me on the north side of the school. 17 Bravo. 1, he's 48. Notify them.
Man, 500. We have a few of us at just 197. Is that where you want us to 56 you?
10-4, north side of the school, so we can all coordinate our response, please.
Copy.
One, this is Hongville SWAT medics. Go up to the dispatch. I need the subject's name again. I'm going to talk to a student and see if I get a picture.
10-4, it should be a...
Thank you. Do you remember? Thank you.
Oh,
Did anybody talk to you about your actions that day?
As far as,
Any law enforcement agency ever sit you down to say, hey, tell us what happened?
Florida Department of Law Enforcement conducted an investigation.
Do you remember who it is who you met with?
First name Keith, I don't remember his last
Does
name.
Riddick sound familiar?
That sounds
Keith Riddick?
familiar, yes, sir.
So you met with Inspector Keith Riddick from FDLE, did you not?
I did, sir.
How long after this occurred did you meet with him?
I want to say it was the summer of 2018.
So nobody met with you right after, like days after this occurred, correct?
No, sir.
Who was your police chief at the time?
Chief Tony Pastizzi.
Okay. Did he ever publicly say anything negative about your actions?
He did not.
For relevance, Your Honor.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Did you ever meet with Detective Strauss from the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Safety Commission?
You mean Detective Seuss?
Judge, I'm going to object to relevance on this as well.
Yeah, what's the relevance of this? You're talking about further in time.
Yes,
What's the relevance?
that he did share certain things with that investigator that I'd like to get into.
No, that's sustained.
It is your position today, I'll end on this, it is your position that everything that you did that day, that we just talked about, was consistent with your training, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, may I just have a 5-minute bathroom break?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, real quick 5-minute restroom break. Again, please don't discuss the facts of the case, the evidence, the witnesses, or the testimony amongst yourselves or anyone else till we reach the end of the trial. I'll tell you when that is. If you leave the notepads in your chairs and step in the back for me for a real quick restroom break, I will be right back with you. Thank you.
Good stuff so far. Good stuff by the state. Good stuff by the defense. Good cross-examination. So out of that witness, we got a lot of concepts that are really helpful. We got, again, concepts relating to the chaos of the scene, the size of the campus. This is a 45-acre campus. There are multiple buildings. The buildings themselves are a football field's length, and there are multiple football fields length in the total campus. This campus holds 3,000 students, so you're getting a lot of different information potentially. This guy, the defendant, was at the time acting alone. He only had a pistol. He didn't have any backup. He didn't have any SWAT gear. He just had his standard uniform. He had potentially a school mic. He had potentially a police mic, getting conflicting information. We got the idea of auditory isolation, visual isolation. We got the idea of just the confusion of the fog of war issues. We got the idea that police are not parents, so that'll be helpful in that respect in some domains. We got, and some evidence that the witness or the defendant was at least apparently trying to be actively engaged to some degree at some time. So we've got a lot of information that's potentially very helpful to the defense here. And that has been emblematic also from previous witnesses. We've got the idea of the fire alarms. We got the idea of echo between the noise. We got some echo here because of the concrete buildings. The noise of the fire alarms, the fact that concrete buildings were good at isolating noise, the shots couldn't be heard 2 stories up even without the fire alarm, we got from prior witnesses, and so forth and so on. So right now we've got a lot of information that goes to confusion, uncertainty, inability to hear where the shots are coming from, lots of conflicting information, auditory tunnel vision, visual tunnel vision, and so forth and so on. And we don't have a lot of information as to what the defendant did. All right, we've heard from 2 or 3 witnesses now that have testified as to little snippets in time where they saw the defendant. But those snippets in time don't really paint a picture, at least to my mind, that really is emblematic of anything in particular. So I don't know if we have a video that shows him hiding behind a car for 45 minutes. I don't know if we have a witness who can testify to him hiding behind a car, whatever the case might be. But so far, we don't really have a lot of information as to what the officer actually did. So far, a little bit unclear in that domain. Thank you to the 300 of you who are currently here, by the way. Last I checked, only 3 of you had retweeted the pinned comment. That makes me slightly sad as an uncivil. Would you be so kind as to please retweet the pinned comment? It really helps bring attention to the channel to make sure that people are aware that we're covering this case and trying to bring some light into what's going on. Interesting factually, interesting legally. And if you enjoy my analysis, enjoy my Supreme Court analysis, enjoy my charges against Trump analysis, enjoy my true crime stuff, enjoy my stuff, please retweet and like, and all that stuff will be super duper appreciated. As the cameraman getting reprimanded, I don't know. We were too busy covering the Trump stuff, so I don't know if he got lambasted in court or not. So if you don't have Twitter, then your social media of choice will also be fine. Discord, if you have it, share it on Discords that allow people to send links. So if your Discord allows people to give links, you can put it on Discord. How about Instagram? Or how about Facebook? Or how about TikTok? Or how about whatever? So, or you can text a friend or whatever. I'll take whatever we can get. We have Twitter, we have TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We have LinkedIn. If you want to share it on LinkedIn now. So forth and so on. You don't want to bother your friends. Don't think of it as a bother. Think about, don't you want to tell your friends about wonderful things? that they might not be aware of. You're just telling them about another wonderful thing that they might not know. It's not a bother. You're helping your friends learn about a fun and enjoyable activity. Your friends are missing out right now on all this wonderful uncivil law action. So that's where we're sitting right now. And we do appreciate every one of you who are here, as always. And we do appreciate the people who help to support the channel financially as well. So far today, Alan Parker gifted 20 gift memberships. He's been a very regular contributor recently. So much thanks to Alan Parker. Alan, you helped pay for me to get a new frying pan today. So that's exciting because the one I have right now is kind of scratched up. So you helped pay for a new frying pan. Thank you very much. Kane Jones gave 10 pounds to say, hi, Kurt, loving watching this case. Been watching the VODs. Thank you for leaving them up. When I come back from work, I catch up. By the way, I'm from UK and like understanding law in the US, great place to be. Thank you very much. And that was apparently Karen's very first super chat ever. So thank you for your very first super chat. Thank you for spending it with me. And DS gave 10 gift memberships. Those are, of course, always appreciated. Thank you to our mods as well. Sandra out there and Rose out there. Being our mod badasses. And Kit Kat is here. Our little trio of mods. Fantastic. Marcel gives $5. Our mods do help the channel very much in keeping it a nice place. And also making sure that you guys are aware of things and sharing it on social media and providing me support and all the rest of it. Kit Kat, Sandra, and Rose in particular have really been super mods recently. And the channel is better for it. And we got a nice little trio of mods. A little triforce of mods. Well, I'll let them debate amongst themselves which part of the triforce they are. You can either be the Triforce of Power, the Triforce of Wisdom, or the Triforce of Courage. I'll let you debate which of you is the Triforce of Power, the Triforce of Wisdom, and the Triforce of Courage. You guys can figure it out amongst yourselves. Yesterday we made some steak. That was fun. Only about half the stream got saved, but that was okay anyway. Cool. Just got some stuff on Amazon. Thanks to some of you guys for helping to support the channel. I just got a new frying pan, some tongs. some new dish soap for my dishwasher and my laundry. Excellent. I can remain clean. Exciting. The bacon wrap steak was pretty delicious. I have to say it did work out very, very well. I plan on making planning on making that dish again many times. I also replaced the battery in my meat thermometer, my smart meat thermometer. So that will help me get the perfect temperature next time. I'm excited about that too. I washed off my cutting board, but I still need to spray down my countertops and my stove top from yesterday. But I did clean up the kitchen board, so I cleaned up half the kitchen from yesterday. But I still need to clean up the other half. Need to make sure it's so fresh and so clean. Use chopped bacon in your chili. That sounds badass. Do I have an Amazon wish list? No, not really.
Go back on the record, this is State versus Scot Peterson, 19-7166 CF10A. I continue to have Ms. Gomes, Mr. Kilroy, and Mr. Klinger present for the state. I continue to have Mr. Igarsh present with Mr. Peterson, who continues to be present. We are outside the presence of the jury. The witness remains on the witness stand. State, ready to proceed with your redirect examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, ready to proceed?
Yes, Judge, I do want to bring up just one issue.
Yes, sir.
We were trying to find one additional audio clip, and we have just found it. I want to be able to just have them identify it.
Bacon is good in every dish.
Okay, please bring the jury.
Bacon is good in all the dishes. Did I pre-cook the bacon before chopping and adding it in? I mean, yeah, I think you would normally. I guess you could do it either way. I'm not sure how you necessarily shred the bacon without cooking it. You could do a very light cook to make it more shreddable and then finish it off in the pot. But either way. We do have an awesome little community, and it's getting more and more awesome with every passing day. I have to say, I think it is, at least. And I've at least been somewhat self-pleased by the thumbnails that I'm now starting to create, and the titles for videos I'm starting to create, and the shorts that I'm now generating as well, and the video descriptions that are coming along with it. I have a nice little process in place where I feel like I'm getting some good quality results out of those things. And I feel like it's working. And I'm still trying to refine it, but I feel like I got something that's working, which is nice. And we're posting the shorts now to TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and my YouTube Shorts channel. So we're posting the shorts to 7 different places right now to try to help out get word about the channel. So
Jurors entering.
we do try to make things work over here as best as we can. I was in a rough spot last year when I first found the channel. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Come on.
Yeah. If you came in about a year ago, I was in a pretty rough spot.
Welcome back. Come on in.
Because I left my job July 2nd, and that was a major external pressure on me in terms of my depression. And so, like, I was in a pretty negative place a year ago. And it doesn't even feel like a year ago. It doesn't feel like it to me. But I'm in a much better place psychologically than I was a year ago. I'm not all better, but I'm definitely better. I'll take improvement.
Mr. Kilroy, when you're ready, you may proceed.
Morning.
Did you know that Scot Peterson was the assigned school resource officer at Marjory Stoneman Douglas?
I did.
And were you aware that he had a similar radio system set up with the school radio and the police radio?
Now, my next challenge on a personal level is just really getting more into the gym. Because right now I'm going to the gym basically 2 or 3 times a week
Yes.
when I'd really like to be going there 4 or 5 times a week. So like last week, I only went twice, which isn't what I aimed for.
In case, for instance, a school monitor.
So the next challenge is just
Crazy kid was entering the campus.
actually getting to the gym and actually doing it more often. So that's the next challenge in my personal journey is really getting the fitness
It's plugged
in
It's a
gear.
Motorola radio, and plug it in every night before I go home, and then use it again in the morning.
For the school radio, so you plug it in at night, so you don't have, is that, so you don't have to charge it during the day?
That's correct.
Is that so you can constantly monitor the radio?
Thank you. $30 from Karen D.
Yes.
Appreciate for the love.
Now, when you were picked up by Medina, by the campus monitor Medina, did you tell him where to go?
I did not.
Did he tell you where you were going?
He took me where he wanted to go.
Did you at any point in time during that cart ride ask him what was going on?
I asked him what was going on right when I met him.
Why did you, as a police officer, ask someone such as Medina that information?
I needed information to give to my dispatch.
Is that because it's important to gather real-time intelligence from all variety of different sources?
It is.
Now, you were asked on cross-examination about when you're at your high school about having a long rifle, and you stated you keep it in.
I'm going to go ahead and create a link for
We
this
keep it in the gun
afternoon
safe
session
in
as
my
well.
office.
Are you aware that some officers keep it in the trunk of their Dodge Durango that they keep in the parking lot, for instance, of Marjory Stoneman Douglas?
I wouldn't know that.
And with your bulletproof vest, even on campus, even when you're at Coral Ridge High School, you wear your vest at all times.
Yes.
Why do you do that?
It's for safety, and also you never know when you're going to have to react to something.
Even something that might not be on your campus.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, when you got to the position where Medina ultimately dropped you off on the golf cart, you didn't hear any shots, did you?
There was no gunfire.
If you heard shots, then a different component of your training would have kicked in.
Yes.
What component of that? What do you do if you hear shots?
I would immediately go to the gunfire
And why do you immediately go to the gunfire?
because that's how we're trained.
Now, does your training use the word precisely? Like, would you have had to have known the shots were coming from classroom 1, 2, 3, 4?
No.
Or just a general area?
General area.
And is the purpose of going towards the shots something to the tune of so you can gather additional real-time information as you're going?
It's to eliminate the threat.
So you don't stay put in a position of cover for 48 minutes, correct?
That's correct.
We don't really have evidence of that yet. Maybe later, but not so far.
Now, you stated on cross-examination that you believe Scot Peterson when he told you the information when you were 40 yards apart.
I did.
And because you believed him, is that why you exposed your entire back to the 1200 building to stand on the curb and scope out a parking lot?
I believe that the information that he was giving me was true.
Is that why you stood in that position?
Yes.
Based upon your friendship, your relationship for 7 years?
Correct.
Now, that information was false. There was no one in the parking lot, was there?
We never found anyone.
So is that the wrong intelligence?
It could have been, if you possibly factor in the +1 rule, but if we didn't find anyone.
All right, I've gone ahead and created a placeholder for this afternoon's stream as well. It's currently scheduled for 1 p.m. That's probably the wrong time, but since I don't know exactly what the right time is, it's just a placeholder. So
Left to right?
Correct.
From where he was standing, would that enable him to see? Let me see if I can get. I'll just use this one. Here on the record, I'm showing Mediterranean as defense exhibit. I don't think it's marked. Oh, demonstrative, never mind.
Yeah, it's not in there.
Demonstrative.
Go ahead.
What's marked is defense F. From the position that you were in,
Yes.
and the position that Mr. Peterson was in, he was scanning left, which means he would be looking west towards the football field,
Correct.
north, straight, which would be up north, correct? Towards kind of like the east side doors,
Correct.
and then to the east, which is the parking lot.
Correct.
Thank you. Did he ever relay to you from those east side doors as he was looking north that he saw 5 kids run out?
That was not relayed.
Would that fit under the category of real-time intelligence?
Yes.
if I put hashtags in my tweets, I'll put some hashtags in the tweets. That's fair.
Now, you were asked on cross multiple times as to why you didn't go in. Did you not go in because you were given intelligence, false intelligence from the defendant that the shooter could be in the parking lot?
At the time, I didn't know it was false, but based on the intelligence that he gave me, I took a position to secure the parking lot, thinking that there possibly could be somebody in there.
When you were on scene, were you aware that Mr. Peterson told fellow Coral Springs officers, 2nd or 3rd floor of the 1200 building?
I didn't hear that until later.
Now, there were some questions about you never going in once again. Did you partake in the rescue portion of
Yes, I did.
to rescue mission?
Yes.
Damn it.
Now, on cross-examination, Mr. Arglash asked you about responsibilities of school resource officers, that you're trained, you have similar training as other Coral Springs officers, let's just say road patrol.
No, that doesn't really work. So
Do
the
you have
description
additional
might be
training
too
as
long.
you're a school resource officer?
Yes.
What is that additional training?
Active shooter training.
What is your job as the school resource officer at your high school?
To mentor, protect, teach, handle crime,
What do you mean by protect?
protect the students, staff
From what?
from possible danger.
I want to play a couple of the audio transcripts that Mr. Eiglarsh played for you. Aaron, if I could please bring up a link to that. It's state 7.
I think you're good. Yep, Court Deputy Unit, all the TVs remain off, correct?
If you could please go to the first one Mr. Eiglarsh highlighted, which I believe was 225:38. 225. 225.38, I apologize.
Keep the school locked down, gentlemen.
You can pause it there. Officer Burton, get the school locked down, gentlemen. As part of your training, if the shooting is still going on, what is the officer supposed to be doing?
Going towards the gunfire?
Are they supposed to be in their position?
No, sir.
Judge, I'm just going to object. The prosecutor is making a gesture in court that's inconsistent with testimony.
Well, the objection's overruled. The jury saw what the witness. Again, ladies and gentlemen, what the lawyers say, I guess what the lawyers do is not evidence. The evidence comes from the witness stand right there and in the form of the exhibits. Over the defense objection. Go ahead, Mr. King.
Mr. Savitsky, can you go back to 223.26?
Keep the school locked. Okay.
01. It's in 17 Juliet 3, 17 Bravo 3, 17 Bravo 4.
Juliet 3, be advised, we have possible, could be Parkland, because I think we got shots fired. Possible shots fired.
Did you hear where Mr. Peterson said shots fired, possible shots fired?
Yes.
Mr. Savitsky, could you please go to 226.40, approximately 3 minutes later?
Juliet 3, we're going to Bravo. I hear shots fired.
Did you hear Mr. Peterson there say, I hear shots fired?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Savitsky, could you please go down to back to 225.56?
All right, 26. No, we also heard it over by inside the 1200 building.
Did you hear where Mr. Peterson said inside the 1200 building?
Yes.
Now going to 227.30.
Hey, Juliet 3, make sure I have a unit over in the front of the school. Make sure nobody comes inside the school.
Did you hear Mr. Peterson say, make sure I have a unit over in front of the school?
Yes.
The I part of that, is that consistent with an incident commander or someone who's the first on scene, taking control of the scene?
Yes.
Explain that to the jury in terms of first on scene. Did they call the shots?
Yes. In an incident like this, they would call shots, and then when more police personnel show up, then the admin will start taking over the bulk of the school.
And is that always immediate, or does that sometimes take a time period?
It takes a little bit of time.
So it'd be almost like relieving them of command.
Correct.
Aaron, if we could go to 228.
Building 13 and 900 building.
Howard, do not approach the 12 or 1300 buildings. Stay at least 500 feet away at this point.
Yeah, stop it there. Stay at least 500 feet away at this point. You testified under, I guess, direct and cross-examination about training. For when a shooting is occurring, what are you trained to do?
Go towards the gunfire.
Are you trained to tell other officers to stay at least 500 feet back?
I am not.
And if you could go to 229.02.
The 10-4 fire rescue is being notified.
Jerry, does he know where the shooter is?
Did you ask, or did you hear where, or was that Mr. Peterson?
Correct.
Did you hear where he asked, does he know where the shooter is?
I heard that.
Okay. Now, is that something that, if Mr. Peterson peeked his head into the building, looked into the building, went into the building, he would already have that real-time intelligence?
Correct.
So asking Perry whether Kyle Lamont, whether he knows where the shooter is at after the shooting, that's not really real-time intelligence for the shooting, is it?
No, sir.
Now, there were some questions, and I understand different radio is used by Coral Springs and BSO.
Right, I added in some hashtags as well for this
Did you
morning's
hear the dispatch that was just played?
video and
Yes.
this afternoon as well. So hopefully that will help a little bit. We'll see.
Now, based upon your training and experience, you had a rifle with you, an M4 that day. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. If you didn't have the M4, if you just had your 6 Sauer, does training prevent you from seeking out an active shooter?
No, you would still go in with your handgun.
But given just the inherent nature of officers responding as backup or second responding officer, how important is the information being relayed by the first officer, the incident commander? How important is that information to be accurate?
Very important,
Why is that?
because it dictates how the responding officers will respond to the scene.
And did the information you received dictate you turning your back to the 1200 building?
Yes.
In your experience telling officers to stay back 500 feet, would that slow down officers responding to an area?
It would.
Now, in your training, are you taught that every shot fired in an active shooter case could be another person getting hit?
Yes.
Are you taught the importance of stopping bleeding?
Yes.
Can you just explain that to the jury?
So as police officers, we're trained with first aid equipment and tourniquets. Tourniquets will go on upper extremities and also lower extremities. On your chest, for a gunshot wound to the chest, we would use chest seal.
And are all those devices utilized in order to stop people from bleeding out?
I'm sorry, repeat the
Are all
question.
those instruments, the tourniquet,
They're designed to stop bleeding, yes.
because is that because time is of the essence?
Yes.
Mr. Argyle asked you about Mirandizing students. That's for a criminal investigation, is it not?
Yes.
As an SRO, though, you were also part of administrative searches.
Correct.
Can you explain the difference in that?
Miranda would be where we're taking somebody to jail. An administrative search would be with the assistance of a vice principal, possibly searching the book bag of a student.
And for an administrative search, is it a lower threshold than that utilized by police officers?
The administrators can do reasonable suspicion.
When you saw Mr. Peterson in his position of cover, was he towards the left side of the hallway, or was he towards the right side of the hallway?
I would describe it, he was on the west side of the hallway.
The west side?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if a shooter was in the parking lot, would standing on the west side of the 700 hallway expose you potentially to shots?
Correct.
So if a shooter was actually in the parking lot, Mr. Peterson would have wanted to stand on the right side of the hallway for cover.
Correct.
You were also asked about adrenaline dumps and tunnel vision, auditory exclusion. Do these things completely prevent officers from doing their jobs?
No.
What's the purpose of training?
The purpose of training is to make you the most proficient at what you're going to do.
Is it also so that if you're in these situations that you respond?
Correct.
Is part of training also to deal with multitasking?
Yes, there's some trainings where,
Is multitasking a part of being a law enforcement officer, being a police officer?
yes, sir.
The real-time information, the real-time intelligence gathered from Medina, white male, burgundy, ROTC, was that accurate information?
It was.
Mr. Arglash asked you, he showed you the demonstrative aid and highlighted different areas. That the shooter could have been here, shooter could have been here, shooter could have been here, shooter could have been here. In those situations, while the shooting is still occurring, what's the remedy to figure out where the shooter is? What are you trained to do?
To go towards it and investigate.
Is that to find out precisely where the shooter is?
Yes.
Just one moment, John. Nothing further on the radar.
Okay, based on that, any recross?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Officer Burton, did I hear you correctly? Did you just tell this prosecutor that the reason why you didn't go into the 1200 building is because my client told you that there could be shooter or shooters in the parking lot? Is that your testimony?
Excuse me, sir?
Did you or did you not just tell Mr. Killoran that the reason why you didn't go into that building at any time is because my client told you that there might be shooter or shooters behind you in the parking lot?
The information that Deputy Peterson provided me, I believed at the time.
That information, northeast parking lot, was given to you by Andrew Medina before you ever even made contact with my client. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Medina also told you before you ever made contact with my client that the shooter or shooters were last seen around the 3-story building, also known as the 1200 building, correct?
That's correct.
And instead of going right in, you took a position of cover, did you not?
When I went to the building is when I looked to the left and Deputy Peterson provided me the information about the parking lot.
which was the same information Medina had already given to you prior to you getting in that position of cover. Yes or no?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
Which was the same information that Medina had already given to you prior to you getting into that position of cover. Yes or no?
I don't know, sir.
You told this prosecutor that you're supposed to go towards the sounds, right? That's what the training tells you to do.
Correct.
When you don't know where the sounds are coming from because of a pronounced echo or for whatever reason, don't you then take a tactical position of cover and wait for more information?
We are trained to go towards the gunfire. If you can't find it while you're traveling to it, slow down. You may have to gather some intel to eventually find the location.
And didn't that look like exactly what my client was doing in real time? Yes or no, sir?
Was this during the shooting, sir? Because I wasn't there during
I'm
the
talking
shooting.
about the 20 to 30 minutes that you see him.
No,
Doesn't
yeah,
it look like he's trying to gain additional real-time intelligence? Yes or no?
Yes, sir, he was.
And you thought he was doing that honestly, correct?
At the time, sir, correct.
Passionately?
Correct.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Fair enough. You got your point through. You don't need to press it.
And even though Andrew Medina, prior to you getting to the scene, tells you that the shooter was last seen in the 3-story building and north parking lot, you don't go in. Isn't that correct?
When I show up on scene, I talk to Deputy Peterson and he provides me the information about possibly in the parking lot.
Which was the same information that Medina had already given you, correct?
Medina said it was a possibility in the parking lot. That's correct.
And so the answer to my question is, yes, I chose not to go in. Isn't that correct?
Counsel testifying. The answer to my question is, I'm sorry, the answer to my question, give me the answer.
No, as to that objection, that's overruled, sir. You can answer the question. Go ahead.
Okay, can you repeat the question?
Still, you chose not to go in after speaking to Medina and him telling you that the shooter or shooters could be in the parking lot. You chose not to go in. Yes or no, sir?
No, my actions were dictated on Deputy Peterson's intel, sir.
Even though you claimed you were part of a rescue mission, you never went inside to help any of the kids that were inside that building. Yes or no, sir?
We're trained in active shooter situations that until the shooter is found, I know it sounds harsh, but sometimes we can't treat victims.
So you never went inside to treat any of the victims. Yes or no, sir?
I did not go in the building, sir.
Prosecutor
Nice.
asked you, if Peterson had peeked in the building or looked in the building, he would have known X, Y, and Z. You remember him asking you those questions?
So the defendant
Same
might not have
question
done
to you, sir.
anything, but you
Had
also didn't do
peeked in
anything,
the building,
which also
opened
goes
up
to
the
show the
door to
defendant's
look, you would
actions
have been
are
able to see those
reasonable
same things. Isn't that correct?
That's
in the
correct.
situation
But
because
you
it's
chose
his
not to
actions
leave
as
your
well.
position of cover to do that. Isn't that correct, sir?
So
Because I was
nice.
under the assumption that based on the intel Deputy Peterson provided me, somebody was in the parking lot.
Let's listen to, first let me just, do you remember when the prosecutor just played you?
This is pretty long for a
25, 26,
recross.
And then he asked you, was that Peterson's voice saying inside the 1200 building? You do recall him saying by inside the 1200 building, correct?
You have to repeat the video.
Let's play
Yeah,
that
so
one
you saw the
first.
defendant for 20, 30 minutes, not going into the building. You also didn't go into the building for 20, 30 minutes.
By
So
inside.
therefore, the defendant's actions are reasonable. You're not being charged. It must be that's reasonable. That can't be the problem.
Building.
I
It's
like
going to
it.
be right off of Holmberg Road by the senior lot. Keep the school locked down, gentlemen.
That's Scott's voice, locking down the school, right?
That's correct.
Attention all units now working to signal 33. Go to Bravo channel for Regular traffic.
Some students say they thought it was firecrackers that went out sure by the football field.
That wasn't his voice saying by the football field,
Alright.
firecrackers,
That was-
correct?
that was
not, that was another deputy.
Correct.
26, so we also heard it's over by inside the 1200 building.
Close. He's not saying inside alone, he's saying by inside, correct?
I believe I heard over by the 1200 building.
If we can play that again. You tell me if you heard him saying by inside.
Crackers that went out sure by the football field. All right, 26, so we also heard it's over by inside the 1200 building. We're locking.
Was that Scot Peterson's voice saying we heard it over by inside the 1200 building?
That's correct.
And that was your belief as well. It was by inside, correct? Meaning by, it could be in the parking lot area, because you learned that from Medina, right?
Objection is the council testimony.
Yeah, that's sustained. Ladies and gentlemen, let me make it clear, you all are gonna decide what you hear on this exhibit as to any exhibits. Again, what the lawyers tell you is not evidence. What any witness tells you who did not hear this themselves is not evidence. You all will decide what the evidence is. Go ahead, sir, you may ask your next question.
Your belief in real time was that the possibility of where the shooter or shooters might be located included both inside the 1200 building, correct? That was one of the possibilities, yes?
No, the information Medina provided was by the 300 building. Sorry, the 1200 building.
Didn't you already testify that one of the possibilities was you thought the shooter or shooters may be inside the 1200 building, sir? Didn't you say that earlier when I crossed you?
At some point, yes.
And finally, can you please identify this 2:45? So this is 18 minutes after the shooting stopped, right? 2:45 would have been that. I just want you to identify whose voice this is at 2:45. And while he's setting that up, I think you said during cross that when you don't know where the shots are coming from, either because for whatever reason, right? You didn't know because you didn't hear them, or if somebody doesn't know where the shots are coming from, you take a tactical position of cover and you stand out in the open, correct?
That's correct.
And you also said you don't just start guessing. You don't just start running to try to guess when you're dealing with football fields of possibilities, correct?
Objection asked and answered, Your Honor.
That's sustained.
That wouldn't be tactically sound, correct, sir?
Objection is asked and answered, Your Honor.
That's sustained.
Let's go ahead and listen to the statement. You tell me if that's Scot Peterson's voice.
The only 43 I have was from Coral Springs that called in and advised he was...
283 was the 1200, 1300 building last time we heard the shot.
Okay. Was that Scot Peterson's voice saying between the 12 and 1300 building last time we heard shots?
That's correct.
No doubt that was Scot Peterson's voice, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Is the witness excused? Yes, sir. All right, sir, you may step down. Thank
A
you.
little long for a recross, but he had some good points. A little shouty. Stacy Lapel. See if we can find out who that is so I can put their name on screen. We'll give it a shot. Stacy Lapel. Lapel. L-I-P-P-E-L. Who are you, Stacy? A teacher. Okay, fine. Let's see. There you go. Well, I don't need now testifying and on the stand. There you go. Thank you, Robin. We do try to make it a pleasant place to be.
And if I can have you come all the way up here to the witness stand, please. Once you reach it, but before you have a seat, if you can just stop and look at me, please. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please be seated. And once you're seated, if I can get you to scoot that chair all the way up as far as it will go. Can you please state your full name and spell your full name?
Stacy Lapel, Staceylippel.
Mr. Klinger, you may inquire.
Thank you, sir. I think it's still morning, so good morning, Ms. Lippel.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm doing as well as I can.
Okay. Could you please tell the jury what your occupation is?
I'm a teacher
And where are you a teacher?
at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School.
How long have you taught at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School?
I just finished my 11th year there.
And what do you teach at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School?
I teach English and also creative writing.
And where is your classroom located at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School?
Right now,
Yes.
in the 200 building.
Was it located in a different
Thank you,
building?
Tom, for the gift memberships. Appreciate it as always.
Where was it? Where was your classroom located in on February 14, 2018?
The 1200 building,
And on what floor in the 1200 building?
the third floor.
And would it be at the west end or the east end of the 1200 building?
It was towards the east end.
Was it the first classroom on the east end?
No, I was in the second class from the east end stairwell.
And do you know whose classroom was the first classroom toward the east end of the floor?
Yes, it was Scott Beagle's classroom.
On February 14, 2018, did you know who Scot Peterson was?
Yes,
How do you know who Scot Peterson was?
he was our school resource officer.
Had you had much contact with Mr. Peterson?
Not too much.
How would you describe if at all, your relationship with him?
It was kind of a casual relationship. I didn't really have a lot of interaction with him. I didn't see really him as a dominating force in the school from my perspective.
Okay. Did you see him at all that day, the 14th of February, 2018?
No, not that I recall.
That afternoon, were you teaching a class around approximately 2:15?
Thank you, Mary, for sending it out. I
was.
appreciate it.
And what was that class about?
I was teaching creative writing that day, in that class period.
Do you remember approximately how many students you had in your class?
It's a very large class. Electives could have up to 40, so I had either 38 to 40.
What was the noise level like in the class?
Very active. It's normally a very interactive class. And because it was Valentine's Day, we were playing music, and it was definitely an animated environment.
Did something happen in and around between 2:15 and maybe 2:23 or so that caught your attention?
Yes, we heard some popping sounds, like a succession of maybe 3 or 4 popping sounds. And then a few seconds later, another succession of popping sounds.
I already have the court audio jacked up as much as I can do. I can't do any more.
Earlier in that day.
I'm sorry
Had
about the
there
court
been,
audio problems. I can't fix
any
it.
type of fire drills or
I already have volume boosters on and it's maxed out. There's nothing more I can do.
overhead or any type of training or anything happened earlier that day?
Yes, we had a scheduled fire drill. I don't remember how often we had to have them, maybe once a month, and it was a scheduled one that we knew about. We actually had a meeting, all departments had meetings with their administrators that morning before school started, just to talk about that we were going to have a scheduled drill and just the protocol, what we need to do. And I do remember that, we were told to kind of speed up, the evacuation, because maybe we've been a little slow before that.
Okay, and could you explain to the jury, since you're on the third floor, east end, what the evacuation procedure was for your classroom?
So we always have like a designated meeting spot. In high school, there are thousands of students, and in the hallways, hundreds can accumulate. So it's impossible to hold hands and keep track of everybody. So we know where we're supposed to go. So anytime the fire alarm goes off, it's just meet me at our place. I have an emergency folder with all my students' names in it, so then I take attendance when I get there. And everyone knows where to go. So we always exit a certain way. So we exit my classroom and we exit to the left to go down the east stairwell.
And then there's a meeting location outside where you all gather?
Correct.
And where was that?
It's usually in the grassy area by Holmberg Road.
And that was for a situation when there was a fire alarm going off?
Correct.
Had you had any training or any background on what to do when there was a code red being called?
Yes, we're always told to accumulate in the hard corner of our classroom, and a hard corner is adjacent to the hallway so that we're out of the line of sight of our door, because our doors have a window in them. So anytime there's a code red, we know to lock our doors and if we have time, if they have the ability to cover our window, and then to go over to the hard corner. So no matter how big or how small your classroom is, you got to get everybody over there as quickly as you can.
All right, let's return to the afternoon when you said that you had heard popping sounds, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you describe what happened in your classroom when those popping sounds were heard?
So the first time we heard the popping sounds, it caused us all to pause because it was an unusual sound, but nothing that sounded menacing to me. And so we just sort of stopped and we said, you know, what is that? What's that noise? And immediately I'm thinking it's firecrackers or balloons, which is not unheard of because it was one of those days, you know, a lot of animation in the school. And so I just assumed that's what it was. Definitely didn't sound like gunshots to me.
And when you say a lot happening that day, a lot of animation, that's because it's Valentine's Day.
Right. I mean, everybody's all, you know, crazy and, you know, acting silly or sad, you know, depending on the situation. So the air is different when it's a holiday in school. It's not like a typical school day.
And when you first heard those shots, did you know if they were coming from inside or outside the building?
It sounded like it was coming from outside. So because I'm on the corner, it sounded to me like it was between the 1200 building and the 700 building. There's sort of like another building. I don't remember the name of it. It's where the auditorium is. So there's like 3 buildings in a row. It sounded like it was coming from that area outside.
And how did the students react to?
I hope the banner doesn't interfere with my chat
It
either.
really
We will
depended.
find
I
out
can tell you
together.
From my perspective, the students who were around me, I know, you know, I have to speak from what I remember. It's just that I know what some students said after, and maybe who were on the other side of the class. But in my vicinity, they were looking at me, asking me, "What do you think that is?" And so no one around me said, "It sounds like gunshots." They were like, "It sounds like." Somebody said balloons popping, and then I said, because then we heard it a second time, then I said, it sounds like it's a computer cart just sort of being pushed over, you know, on the concrete between buildings. It sounded kind of hard, you know, at that point when I heard the second one, when I was trying to, you know, kind of understand what that noise could be.
Okay. Now, after that, after you heard those popping sounds twice, what happened next?
The fire alarm went off.
Okay, and so is this now going to be sort of like what happened in the morning? Be the same type of situation where you would be starting to evacuate?
Yes, I mean, the protocol would be the same. It wasn't surprising. We've had fire alarms go off several times in one day. So at that point when the fire alarm went off, I'm thinking there was nothing that would cause me not to evacuate. I wasn't concerned. It didn't sound, like I said, like anything menacing. So as soon as it went off, you know, I'll meet you guys over at the spot. I yelled over everybody. And then I thought in my head, somebody pulled it as a joke. I was thinking maybe I should grab my keys, maybe told everybody to grab their backpacks because it's the end of the day, 20 minutes left in class. We might be dismissed by then after that. So then I thought maybe it's culinary cooks a lot, they burn a lot, so that could have set off the fire alarm. So nothing alerted me that was strange, so we just evacuated.
Culinary, is that in the same building as you were, or are they in a different building?
They're in a different building.
Right, so an alarm goes off the whole school?
Correct,
Throughout
right.
the school?
Mm-hmm.
All right. In the morning and in the afternoon, when that alarm goes off, what exactly are your precise duties? What do you have to do, or what are you supposed to do in response to hearing that alarm?
Right, get everybody out of the classroom and out of the building as quickly as possible. That's my job.
And how about the door to the classroom? How does that work?
So you lock the doors. We did not have automatic locking doors. So I open the door, kids start to leave, exit where they're supposed to exit. I wait, I hold the door open, I wait for the last kid to get out. I close the door behind me and lock it behind me.
And did you do that afternoon?
Yes.
Okay. After you locked the door, what happened next?
I walked a couple of steps, and right in front of me are all the kids. It's not uncommon for there to be sort of like a log jam in front of the stairs because it's like hundreds of kids trying to get out, you know, to like sort of funnel in. So there was kind of like a log jam, and so I was behind most of the kids, all my students. There may have been students behind me from other classes. But then all of a sudden I hear screaming, and then the crowd just starts to push back. So where everybody was going forward, everything stops, I hear screaming, and then the students start pushing towards me. So I turn, I don't hear any gunshots yet, but everyone's
I'm
going
happy
towards
today,
me.
just
So I go
incidentally
to my
and
door
not
and open
apropos
it,
of
and
anything
then I
in
start
particular.
hearing
Just wanted to
gunshots.
express I'm feeling happy today.
Now, before you had testified to the
Life is not too bad today.
Correct.
Is this now a different type of sound?
Absolutely, it's definitely gunshots. Very, very loud.
Very loud.
Very.
All right, so you now, in your mind, what is that telling you to do?
It's telling me to get the kids into a safe location. Get my door open as soon as possible and get them in there and get into the hard corner.
Okay, so would it be fair to say at this point then you've moved from a fire alarm evacuation to a code red, get everybody into a safe place in the classroom, away from the door and the windows? Is that?
Yes.
Okay. So in order to do that,
Oh yeah,
what
Bev,
did you do?
I suffer from clinical depression. Sometimes I
Nobody
go
can
through
see it
long
besides
spells where
unlocking
I'm
my
having
door.
problems.
Well, that would be the beginning, yes.
But
Right.
recently I haven't
Right.
had any
So,
really long
I'm
spells where I've
unlocking my
had
door. I
problems,
stay at
which
my
is
door. I
nice.
keep it open.
It's
I
been a
hear the
while since I really
gunshots, but
crashed.
it's chaos at this point.
Yeah, it's
because
been a
kids
while
are
since I've
screaming,
had
kids are running
long
past me,
spells of
and
depression,
then
so
just kids are going
things
wherever
are
they can to
overall
seek
better than they've been in the
shelter.
past, which is
So
nice.
I've got some of my students coming into my class, students I've never seen before come into my class. I also see them going into Scott Beagle's class. He was doing the same thing I was doing. We were sort of neck and neck. Like I don't know that he had closed his door when I closed my door, but we were definitely like right there next to each other, and then shuttling kids into our class. So I'm standing there at my door, and then I don't know at what point, but I saw the shooter come out of the stairwell and stand at the very
I
end
think
of
working
the
out has helped. I think a
stairwell.
lot of things have helped. I think me leaving my job was a huge factor.
I was
I think it
at
took a
my
long
door
time
with my
to
door open, my
for
back
that to
to
really
my
manifest,
door,
but I think that was a
but
huge factor.
facing Scott and facing the shooter.
Um,
And so, Scott Beagle then is also just.
the ketamine treatment I was on for a while helped, I think.
Your right,
He was to my left.
to your left.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, his classroom is, if I'm walking out of my classroom, he's on my left.
Okay. And if you, just the reverse, you're walking in, he's.
Right,
to the
he would be to the right. But his back is to the shooter where I'm facing the shooter.
Okay. And,
Well, I did make
So
a
you
point of
both-
saying apropos of nothing,
first
so
you
sorry
did
about the
your
timing
both
on the witness. I was just feeling good and
Yes.
just want to say I was feeling good, so. Sorry about the timing of what the witness is testifying to. I was just like, you know what, I'm in a good spirit today.
So I remember.
You have to take the victories where you can find them, you know what I mean?
Lots of smoke in the hallway. It was just very surreal. Just the shooter standing there, he's just splaying his rifle back and forth. It's just a barrage of bullets. And he's shooting down the hallway. Kids are still running. Kids are still coming in. And then when I felt that it was the right time, I think I saw him walking towards us, Scott and I. I turned to this side, because my door is kind of open this way, and I turned to grab both handles of my door to close it, and as I'm doing that, I just remember yelling to Scott to close his door, just close your door, and then I felt like a very hot, searing
Yeah, ketamine treatment.
thing glide across my skin, It didn't really hurt, it just felt very hot. And then I closed my
I
door.
found
kinda
ketamine
hung
therapy
onto
to
the
be very
handle
helpful.
for
I
just a
took it
couple of
for,
seconds because I just remember it's very hard to,
oh no,
you can't just
like,
like let the door close. It's not gonna
took it
just let
for
go
like
shut. You
maybe
have to really
6
yank it in
weeks.
that building.
And there
So
was a
I
pause
held
while I
on
was
to it for
fighting
a
with my
couple of
insurance company
seconds,
about it.
and then
And I took it for another 6 weeks.
jumped over to where
I found
my
it to be
students
helpful.
were sitting. But
I found it to be less
in the
helpful
seconds
in
that
more
it took
recent
me to jump
times.
over to the students,
So I'm taking
shots
a
came through the
pause
window of my classroom door.
because I think my body became more tolerant to it, which is often a problem with many medications.
Crazy hectic
But
moment.
ketamine
The shooter is firing, and you are struggling
helped
to
a
make sure
lot.
that door
Right.
closes. Do you recall?
My pro tip for ketamine therapy,
He was doing the
if
same
you
thing.
go down that
He
route, my pro
was,
tip is you
I
get
just remember
a
seeing him
eye
from my
mask
peripheral,
to block out the light,
standing there, and kids were,
and you
running,
get some
just like they were
earphones,
running into
sound
mine.
isolating
So
earphones,
if it wasn't my
and you
classroom they were
find some
getting
sort
into,
of
it was his classroom.
affirmations that you really like while you're doing the ketamine therapy.
Of Scott Peterson?
Yes, I don't
And I think
really
that's
have
my
a
pro tip for
memory
ketamine
of,
therapy.
I only know what, because I've
So
seen
you
the
block
surveillance
out
video
all
of
the
my
external
hallway.
stimulus,
So I don't
block
have
out
a
the
memory
light,
of seeing him
block
get
out the
shot. I
sound,
did
except
see him
for
get
the
shot. It's just not something that I can say that I
affirmations.
remember happening.
There's some good ones on YouTube or Spotify. You have to find ones you really like that speak to you, that are really positive. So it requires a little experimentation. And then you just put that on, you listen to that while you're doing the ketamine. It's pretty
I knew where to
kick-ass.
go. I knew my students, I was hoping they knew where to go. So as soon as I closed the door, I just
My
knew
voice
that I
is super
needed to
loud.
get
I
from
could
this
try to
point
turn
this
down my
point,
voice more.
so that,
It's already
I
at like
knew,
20% volume.
there's the
I
window
could
right
turn my
there,
voice
and
down more.
the shooter was walking towards me.
Hold on.
And so it was just like
Let's see. I'll turn my
immediately, as
voice
soon as I
down
landed,
to
and I literally
35%.
like took
See if
two
that
big
helps.
jumps, landed on the laps of my students, and then shots just came in, like 3 or 4
In my
shots came
case,
through my
no, it
window.
was not Spravato. In my case, it was
Yeah, I did.
intramuscular injection.
Were you able to see the shooter or the gun when you said the window?
Spravato is
Right,
also
no, I
ketamine,
didn't
but
see
that was
the
not
gun
what
come
my
through
treatment was.
the
My treatment was
window.
intramuscular
I don't know
injection.
where he was standing, but just, I'll never forget the feeling and the sound of the shots coming through the window, because you almost like feel it in your chest. It's so loud.
It was that one.
Yeah.
And were you able to tell where the shots are going toward?
I didn't, I imagine, I can only assume he was trying to shoot me because he saw me through the window. But I will never forget the bullet casings that were like in the classroom, because we were sitting there for quite a while. But I saw, maybe 3 or 4 like copper colored casings on the ground along with glass.
And the sound at that point was?
Very, very loud. After he shot through my door, or maybe it was before he shot through my door, he was shooting Scott or into Scott's classroom, but there was just a lot of shooting right outside my door.
Okay. Since you had made that leap, you
Right.
couldn't see anything outside, right?
Correct.
Then explain to us what happens after the shots are fired into your classroom.
So we just sit there, we're quiet, we're not moving. I look at the clock because I don't think this is real, and I'm looking at the clock and I'm thinking, this can't be a drill, as crazy as that sounds, because it's like the end of the school day. They would never do something like this at the end of the school day. And texts are coming in from my coworkers who are on the other side of the school, who don't really know what's going on, just asking me what's going on, because everybody at this point is locked down.
I can't
So
use
I'm
a
able to
compressor
get a text
inside the
out,
software I'm
there's a
using. I'm
shooter,
using a web-based software,
in my
so
building on
there's
my
no way for
floor.
me to add in a
And
compressor.
then,
I'm not
got
inside
some text out to
OBS.
my family, but then it was very difficult to communicate. So students were trying to do that. They were trying to communicate. It was very, very still and quiet after, the shooting. We heard a lot of shooting down the hallway. Yeah.
I don't mean to be rude, but.
Right,
Any
right.
thoughts on testosterone injection?
The loud shots
None in
are fired.
particular.
Right.
All right.
If it's right for you, it's right for you.
Yeah, I hear a lot of shots go down the hallway. Now my window's open. It's just nothing in between my class and the hallway at this point. So it's very loud. I can hear everything that's happening very clearly down the hallway. So lots of shooting. I can tell that it's going down the hallway because the sound gets fainter and fainter, but it's still very loud.
Okay. And when you say the windows are, you're referring to the glass.
Right, the
pane
panel
window.
of my classroom door.
Okay. So you do hear more shots, but they do become fainter?
Right.
Yeah. And you took that to mean?
That it was going down the hallway, shooting down the hallway.
Okay. Did there come a time when the shooting stopped?
Yes.
And was there in that crazy moment, do you have any idea maybe how long that was?
I don't know. I want to say it was probably a little past 2:30 that the shooting stopped. I had my eye on the clock a lot because I couldn't understand what was happening. And the closer it got to the end of the school day, the more I realized how real this really was.
Okay. How about you? How about your arm? Did there come a point when you realized what that feeling was?
It wasn't probably until like maybe 20, 30 minutes later where it's like I felt a stinging on my arm and I kind of went like this and I realized that my jacket was torn and then I looked at my hand and there was blood on my hand, but I didn't want to scare the kids, so I didn't do anything, say anything. I was okay. It didn't seem like anything really penetrated me. So I started to freak out a little bit, realizing what had happened. But it really wasn't, I didn't really feel too much at that point.
After the shooting stopped, any more sounds from the hallway that you were hearing?
I heard a young man screaming for help several times. Then I heard talking, and we all assumed it was the shooter. We were, when the student or the young man was screaming for help, I just thought, this is the shooter trying to lure us out into the hallway. So we all just stayed put. It was very scary to hear that. We didn't know what that was exactly.
So you heard talking, but you had no idea who was talking.
Right.
You couldn't see, obviously, you couldn't
Correct.
see out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And the student, or at least the voice that you heard who was in pain, did that continue?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
You had said there you also heard somebody screaming in pain or was in agony in the hallway.
He was just screaming for help in Spanish and in English. Yeah.
And did that continue on?
I would say he probably screamed for help maybe 3 times, if I could. It was more than once. It's like he would scream for help and then stop, and then scream for help and then stop.
Did you later become aware of what the talking was that you heard?
Yes, I found out later it was Anthony Borges, and he was on this phone trying to call I think he was talking to his father or his mother.
And he was the injured student that was
Right.
calling out for help.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know about how long? I know that it's hard because it's all happening and it's a shock to be trying to take it in. But do you know how long before help did arrive on the floor?
I think it was definitely over an hour, because I remember it was around 4 o'clock when I was outside, and I was recently outside, and my mother had called me to see what was going on. And I just remember looking at the phone, it said like 4:05 or something. So at that point, I was only outside for maybe 15 minutes. So from the time the shooting started until we were evacuated, it was probably about 3:45 when SWAT came to get us out of our rooms.
Okay, so over an hour after the shooting had started.
Right.
All right, when the SWAT team comes onto the floor, can you describe how the evacuation of your classroom proceeded?
We heard, so it was very quiet for a long time, and then we heard noise in the hallway, and it seemed like it was police officers, but they had come to grab the young man who was in the hallway. But then I just kept hearing, police open up, police open up, police open up, like down the hall, and then getting closer to my room. I heard some glass shattering, probably the police opening up the doors. And then we heard some commotion, and I started to feel like, okay, this sounds like it's help. But when he was outside our door, there were 2 SWAT officers outside our door, and I heard them say, police open up, but I didn't get up. But they were easily, because my window of my door was shot out, he just reached in and opened the door. And 2 SWAT officers came into my classroom and then told us to put our hands up, pointed their guns at us, and then asked if I was the teacher, and I said yes. And so then he said, everybody get up and don't look down.
Was it at that point, or did there come a time that you realized whether or not anyone was injured besides you?
No, I didn't. It wasn't until my door was open and I saw Scott Beagle's body.
Take your time.
Till I saw his body in front of my classroom that I realized that this was really bad.
Did you come to the realization that anybody else in your classroom was injured?
I didn't know because not every student of mine ended up back in my classroom, because I had 38 and I think I ended up with about 20. And I had no idea where anybody ended up. So when I saw him and then I walked out into the hallway, and it was a war zone. It was glass and bullet casings and dust. And then I looked to my right and then I see bodies and a lot of blood in the middle of the hallway.
There come a time later on whether you learned if anyone was injured in your classroom other than yourself.
Correct.
And were there any other injuries?
I had 2 students, Meadow Pollock and Joaquin Oliver, who were my students during that class period, and they were killed in the hallway.
Was anyone else injured though inside the 20 or so that you were able to get into your room before the shooter appeared on the floor? How about that? Was there any of those that were injured?
No one was injured.
Okay, just so in your classroom at that time, just
At that time, correct.
All right. The police officers or the SWAT team directs you and your students to evacuate and go down. Would I be correct in saying to the west stair?
Yes,
To the west stairwell. So that's almost the whole length of the hall.
it was, yeah.
Okay. And that is when you realized that Meadow and Joaquin.
Yes, I saw there were a couple of bodies to the left of me. There was a body in the alcove where the restroom was, and then I saw another body at the very end of the hallway, sort of sitting up and slumped over.
When you exited from the 3rd floor onto the west stairwell, was there any more bodies out on that landing?
No.
Did you come to learn later on that there had been a body there?
Yeah, I came to learn that Jamie Guttenberg was at the top of the stairwell, but she was moved.
No objection, Your Honor.
Go ahead. All right. May I approach this for a moment?
You may.
I want to, if I can just show you what it's been marked to state you, it's a thumb drive, and did you have an opportunity this morning to review?
Yes.
Possible sentence is 95 years,
Accurately represent,
plus loss of pension, which I
Yes.
believe is $104,000 a year. I'd have to double check, something like that.
into evidence?
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Without objection, states you for identification will now be in evidence that is State's Exhibit 21.
And I would like to also publish.
Just create a brief slide.
ladies and gentlemen, again, just based on some scheduling issues, I'm just gonna press pause on the direct examination right now. I'm gonna send you to lunch a little bit earlier than I normally would and ask you to be back from lunch a little bit earlier than I usually would. We're gonna pause. As soon as we come back from the lunch break, we're gonna conclude a direct examination of the witness. We're then gonna have the cross-examination of the witness, redirect and recross as needed, and then we'll proceed with the state's presentation. So with the same admonition as always, please do not discuss the facts of the case, the evidence, the witnesses, or the testimony amongst yourselves or anyone else till we reach the end of the case. I'm gonna ask you to please be back in the jury room at 1:30 p.m., 1:30 p.m., okay? Have a good lunch.
All right, looks like we're about to end the stream for the morning session here. I'm excited about lunchtime. I need to make more steak.
Okay, we're outside the presence of the jury. Everyone can be seated. State, anything you need me to address before we recess for the lunch break?
No, Your Honor.
Defense, anything you need me to address? So, ma'am, you can talk to anyone you want about anything you want, just not about your testimony in this case.
Okay.
And then you may step down, have a nice lunch. I'll see you right back here at 1:30 p.m.
Okay,
Thank you very much. Okay, so then we'll otherwise be in recess until 1:30 p.m.
All right, great. All right, guys, that's going to end our stream for the morning. I hope you all are having a good day. I'm having a great day, even though my voice has decided to give out just now suddenly for no particular reason, so that's annoying. But yeah, kind of the same testimony we've been hearing about before, and with this teacher, nothing new there. Same kind of emotional-led testimony. Not a lot really implicating the defendant, it seems to me so far. The evidence against the defendant seems very thin on the facts. So I don't know what the state has in terms of what the defendant did or did not do, but it's a little thin to my taste, very much so actually for that point. So I don't think blue cheese on steak could be a good call. I'm not sure if I have any blue cheese, but if so, I might put some on my steak. Anyways, we are on break for an hour and 10 minutes. I will see you back at 12:30 Central Time for more stream. And until then, my friends, I hope all's well, my friends. Cheers, my friends, and goodbye.